Stand by. We're going live. We're going live. 10, 9, going live. 7, 6, 5, going live. 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to 10 Seconds to Air. I'm Alita Guillen. Today we are talking about nutrition and health, a field swirling with mixed messages and confusion, lacking clear, actionable information. We are constantly bombarded with conflicting advice, fad diets, intermittent fasting, a list of bad foods, and then miracle goji berries, all selling us brand new ways to prevent disease and maybe even drop a few pounds or live a little healthier life. But what do we really need to do to optimize our health and fight disease? My guest today is Dr. William Li, a world-renowned physician who has devoted his career to studying food and its effects on our health. He is also an excellent communicator who backs every piece of advice with real science. Dr. Li is the president of the Angiogenesis Foundation, and his work has led to more than 40 FDA-approved therapeutics and devices for cancer, cardiovascular disease, vision loss, and wound healing. You may have seen him on The Today Show or read his national best-selling book, Eat to Beat Disease. His TED Talk, Can We Eat to Starve Cancer, has over 11 million views. Dr. Li focuses on food as medicine and is out with a new book, Eat to Beat Your Diet. Dr. Li has an amazing way of explaining how the body works, why we need fat, how what we eat affects our hormones and our metabolism, and explains quite simply how we can actually reset our metabolism at any age. Here now is Dr. William Li. Dr. Li, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me on.
I am so looking forward to this conversation. I mentioned to you before we hit the record button that I have been diving into this book and so much great information in it. You have taken on a topic that a lot of us find confusing, and you are really talking to us and simplifying it and speaking kind of our language. And you speak a lot. You wear a lot of hats. There's a lot that you do, right?
Right.
What goes through your mind 10 seconds before communicating all this? 10 seconds to air.
You know, the first thing that goes through my mind is wondering for the audience, what is their biggest confusion about what we're setting out to talk about? Because I'd like to dive right in there and figure out how I can start to frame it up, bring some science to it, bust some myths if necessary, and then bring some clarity to the conversation.
And why do that? You started off practicing, right? And then you made this transition to dive into explaining to a bigger population. Why? Why did you take that turn?
You know, I've always had lots of worn different hats. I'm a scientist. I'm what they call a vascular biologist. So blood vessels are what I study. Blood vessels are important because we've got 60,000 miles worth of blood vessels coursing through our body, packed under skin, and they are the highways and byways of health or sometimes disease. And so I'm always thinking about the whole body and what we can actually do to tweak our circulation. And I'm also a doctor, internal medicine. And because internal medicine means I take care of men and women, young and old, healthy and sick, my own orientation has always been to help people get better or stay well and then get better, recover, heal if they get sick. And then the other thing is really I love food. I love to cook. I love to travel. I love to explore food. I have great reverence for traditions of food across different cultures. And so for me, I set out on a career to practice internal medicine, do vascular biology research. It led me to run a nonprofit, and it's through that nonprofit that we started to look at common denominators of disease that led to more than 40 FDA-approved treatments for cancer, diabetes, and vision loss. And what happened is literally with the success of that part of my career, I realized, maybe not so surprisingly, that the biggest opportunity was being missed, which is to prevent disease in the first place.
Right.
And if you're going to talk about prevention, you can't talk about drugs. They're not always available. They're expensive. They all have side effects. And I realized that prevention is about the thing that we all use as medicine 3 times a day, which is food. And as a medical doctor, as a scientist, the biggest and really as a critic of nutrition from years and years of being brainwashed by the medical community that, we don't have enough evidence. And, there's a lot of hogwash going on out there. I decided, you know what, it's time to actually put that to bed. And why don't I just go through the research myself to develop that evidence? And so that's how I got into this area, which is, very, very authentically being passionate about food, being passionate about science, and being passionate about medicine to say, all right, if I just swing my sledgehammer to crack open the evidence, let's go for it. And that's what brings me to this conversation.
Yeah. Well, you said that your own industry, so you're practicing medicine, wasn't giving you the information that you wanted, which I think the average population, that's where the confusion is for us. And I'm going to speak for us as being the other side of this, is we expect when we go to the doctor, we're going to get all this information that you're actually talking about now, but we don't. Why is that?
It's really amazing, but even to this day, nutrition education in medical school and the curriculum is de-emphasized. And the typical doctor who graduates today has something like 7 or under 12 hours of nutrition education throughout their entire medical school. And then there's scant opportunity to learn after you're out with your medical degree and your stethoscope. And by the way, the other reason is that, you have to walk the walk before you can talk the talk. And I will tell you this, that although the situation is improving a little bit, the nutrition of students who go to medical school to become doctors is so awful. We go to the canteen and it's usually fried food and burgers, and we don't eat normal meals. And I think that the younger generation, the new generation of doctors are going to be very different because they are awakened to the problem of food. But most of the doctors that we see, that you might actually go to your doctor and be put into a health system, and you're asking the question that, by the way, every single cancer patient asks their oncologist after they receive their diagnosis and hear about the chemo and they ask about the treatment. They always say, "Hey doc, what can I do for myself?" And the answer they get is kind of a hand wavy, just go make sure you have enough nutrition, eat anything. If you like in McDonald's, go out and eat whatever. And I, my jaw drops when I hear this to this day. We do know, based on research, how the directions that we should be going to be able to help our patients get better. And we're not talking about cure. We're talking about get better from wherever you actually are. And that's one of the messages that I want to send out is that, the science is advanced, the evidence is accumulating. I think every individual, whether you're sick or not, when you go to your doctor, that there's information that should be discussed. And when you're not getting it from your medical doctor who talks to you about everything else virtually in your life, that's a gap that I'm setting out to kind of address.
Yeah. So let's dive in. Let's dive into the book.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things that I see that you start off with is you talk about fat. Let's take fat head on, because a lot of us hear the word fat and we have a negative, it has a negative implication for us. You say not all fat is bad.
Yeah. So first of all, the title of my book is Eat to Beat Your Diet. And I want to tell everybody that it's a trick title because it's not a diet book. In fact, Eating to Beat Your Diet, which is the whole title, is really an anti-diet book. So I'm talking about the new science of our metabolism and what we're discovering about body fat that actually upends a lot of the assumptions we have. And so what you just said, Alita, is so true. As adults, we have a very negative impression just from the word fat. So here, I'm going to take you through a couple of things I think everyone will relate to. You're taking a shower, you step out of the shower, you're drying yourself off. Out of the corner of your eye, in the mirror, you see a lump or a bump. I don't care what your body size is,
right.
But you're not happy with, right?
Right.
So you go, oh man, I got to get in better shape. I got to eat better. I got to go work out, right? So then the next thing you're going to do is step on the scale. And if that number is the number you're hoping for, you curse yourself. Like, man, I knew it. Now I really got to do something about it. And then if you actually go in the grocery store, and you even if you're just wheeling by, if you're a vegan and you're just wheeling by the meat section and you see a big big thing of steak in the counter, and you see this big rind of fat around it, you look at it and go, "Oh, I hope nobody eats that." Right? So as adults, our immediate knee-jerk reaction and mental association, visual association with fat of any kind is negative, right? But I want to remind everybody that's not always true. Because if you wind the clock back and think about the last time you saw a baby, a newborn, it might be, a grandchild, or it might be a nephew or a niece, or it might be your own kids. That's where you see a big, chubby human, big fat cheeks, big round tummy, big fat arms and legs that kind of look like, what the balloons that the circus clown makes into a poodle, right? Seeing that chubbiness is what makes us grin and smile from ear to ear. And so we don't always curse body fat. Sometimes it makes us light up and think, well, man, what a healthy baby that is, right? So this is what I kind of dive into in my book. And as a researcher, this is what what I wanted to do, is to say, well, wait a minute. Body fat is not always bad. In fact, I asked the question, where does body fat even come from? Right? Because we think, oh, you get fat when you stuff your face. Well, let me tell you, we just started developing body fat before we even had a face in the womb that we could stuff with food. And this happened way before we were born. So here's the amazing thing. And I just want to kind of cut to the chase on this. Body fat is not all bad. Body fat, in fact, healthy body fat has at least 4 job descriptions. First, it's padding. And this is when it's like inside our belly and around our bones, in our muscles. Body fat as padding can save our life, because if we didn't have any padding, if we tripped on the carpet and fell on the floor, some of our more delicate organs might split open. So Thank goodness we've got enough padding. That's number 1. Number 2, body fat actually is a fuel tank for our energy, for our metabolism. I want to explain how this works. About 3 months into pregnancy, as our little tiny bodies are forming in the womb, in our mom, first our circulation forms, because we need blood flow to every organ. Next, our nerves form, because our organs need instructions that the nerves delivers to every organ in the body. And third, body fat forms. And guess what? Body fat doesn't form as the muffin top in the beginning. What it actually forms is it's actually like a sheet of bubble wrap. The tiny little bubbles you pop, you wrap your things on for a box. Okay. Bubble wrap as fat as bubble wrap forms and wraps around blood vessels. Now you go, wait a minute, that's kind of weird. Why does fat form like bubble wrap around blood vessels? Well, it turns out that our fat cells, called adipocytes, are in fact fuel tanks. And the fuel that we have for our body comes from the food that we eat. And think about it. Later on, after we're born, we're eating food. Our food gets converted into fuel. It circulates in our blood vessels and our circulation. And so our fuel tanks need to be right next to where the fuel is coming from, which is in our blood. So insulin and all these other hormones help us draw on that energy. And although we hear about insulin all the time, we don't think about where it actually goes. Some goes into our cells, but any extra energy from food that we eat that we don't need to support the blinking of our eyes, the beating of our heart, our muscles, our breath, anything extra gets stored in our fuel tanks, which happens to be fat, fat cells, adipocytes. Now, so it's our fuel tank. Number 2, that's the second job description. Number 3 is that, and this was a big surprise to me as I was researching for my book, our body fat is an organ. It's an endocrine organ, which means that it secretes hormones. Now, I'm talking about an endocrine organ like your pancreas, like your thyroid, like your pituitary. And you're like, wait a minute, body fat's an organ? Yeah. Absolutely. In fact, one of the most important organs of our body for energy. All right. And as you know, like if you are shipwrecked on a desert island with no food, you will shrink to a skeleton. All the body fat's going to go away, and then you will die. You cannot survive. You will have no energy without body fat. By the way, people who struggle with eating disorders and become skeletal and anorexic, they also suffer the same problem, not enough body fat. So it turns out that our fat, healthy levels of fat that secrete normal, healthy hormones, there's 15 of them. Three of them I think are worth talking about because they tell us how important it is for our energy. Number one is called leptin, Leptin. Some people think of leptin as kind of like a satiety or fullness hormone. I will tell you it is, but I don't want you to think about it like a light switch, on hungry, off not hungry. It's more like a volume switch when you're listening to the radio, or listen to your playlist. All right.
Or listening to this podcast.
Or listen to this podcast. Or maybe so when the leptin is low, you get hungry. And when the leptin is high, you get full. You feel like you're full. But somewhere in between, sort of like your appetite kind of controls itself. So leptin is actually a switch to tell you when you need to pull over to a rest stop or to a filling station in order to get more fuel, which happens to be your dinner table or your refrigerator or a restaurant to go eat something. All right. Another hormone that's very important for our metabolism is called adiponectin. Now, many of you may have heard of leptin, but very few people heard about adiponectin. So, Alita, if you came to my medical clinic and I drew just a tube of blood, like for your regular checkup, however, I sent a note to the blood lab to say, please analyze every single hormone in your body and send me back the levels. It'll come back with a ton of information, and adiponectin, which is made by body fat, will be 1,000 times higher in your body than any other hormone, higher than thyroid, higher than estrogen, higher than testosterone, higher than cortisol. And the reason that it's so freaking high, adiponectin, is because adiponectin works with insulin so that when you eat food, normal healthy food, it works with insulin to draw that energy into your fuel tanks, into your fat. And if you didn't have adiponectin, your insulin wouldn't be able to do its job in a healthy way. Your metabolism would be very inefficient, and you wouldn't be able to draw your energy in from the food that you ate. Very important. And if adiponectin is like the gas pedal, the accelerator for your energy drawing in for your metabolism, the third hormone, resistin, is like the brake. So anytime you need to go from the middle lane to the fast lane for your metabolism, the accelerator goes down, adiponectin goes way fast. Let's draw that energy in so you can have energy for your metabolism. Oops, truck ahead. Resistin comes in as a brake. Whoa, slow down, and not so quick. Let's play off each other. So these three hormones are responsible for us to have any energy at all. And the fourth job description of healthy body fat: padding, fuel tank, hormones. The fourth one is actually as a space heater. And you're like, well, you mean like fat like blubber? No, we are not like a polar bear or a killer whale. I'll tell you, it turns out that we have different kinds of fat. We've got white fat, which is the wiggly jiggly stuff. Some of it's under the skin and you can see it in a mirror. Some of it's packed into the tube of your body. That's the stuff that you don't want to have too much of, But then there's something called brown fat, and brown fat is actually not wiggly jiggly. It's not lumpy bumpy. It's wafer thin. It's like paper, all right? And it's not close to the skin. It's close to the bone. It's actually pressed along the side of your neck, a little bit under your breastbone, a little bit under your arms like a girdle, and a little bit scattered into your belly. And what happens with brown fat, it is like the cooktop of your gas range, right? So when brown fat is activated, it's just like when you go to the kitchen to cook some soup, all right, heat some water. You go up to the stove and you go click, 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 and it goes whoosh, right? Now the flame goes on. Brown fat will do the same thing when you light it up. What does brown fat do when it lights up? It's got to draw energy from someplace to get that, quote, flame, to create that heat. Where does it draw it from? It draws that energy from the fuel tanks stored in your harmful white fat, excess harmful white fat. So brown fat can burn down the energy from excess fat in your body. It's good fat that can fight excess bad fat. And cold temperatures will light up your brown fat, but so can certain foods. So you can actually eat foods to light up your brown fat, to burn down your harmful fat. When you burn down your harmful fat, you unleash your metabolism, because when you have too much fat, it actually destroys your metabolism. Now your hormones can actually work properly, and now your fuel tanks can actually fill up and and be used as efficiently as possible. So that's why fat, we shouldn't make fat the villain
Yeah.
that we often think it is.
Yeah.
It's very important to have enough of it.
Okay, so a couple questions to follow that up with. I just want to go through the 4 functions: the padding, the fuel tank, the hormones, and the space heater. So we've got that. Okay, and repeat again the 3 hormones that you just mentioned. I missed the third one.
Three of the 15 hormones.
Yeah.
One is called leptin.
Okay.
Leptin. The second one is called adiponectin.
Okay.
And adipo is coming from fat, made by fat. And then the third one is called resistin. It resists adiponectin. So adiponectin is the accelerator for your energy, works with insulin, and resistin is the brake to slow that process down.
Okay. Now the brown fat you said fires up when it's cold. So are people does that mean people in colder climates are doing better when it comes to their metabolism, or should we stand outside in the cold? How do we?
This has been studied in people who live in Scandinavian countries, but particularly the people in those countries who work outdoors. We're talking about people who fix telephone lines or working, the lumberjacks who work outdoors a lot. Yeah, their brown fat is lit up a lot. Okay, but the interesting thing about brown fat is that while we do now know today that humans have it, all humans have brown fat, the original brown fat was discovered in Europe in the 1700s in hibernating animals. Now, think about this. Okay, this is what's interesting. Back in those early centuries, there were naturalists who studied the natural world. There was a guy named Conrad Gessner who was really curious about hibernating animals. So he caught one. It's called an alpine marmot. Kind of looks like a woodchuck. It feeds it eats a ton, like a squirrel does during the fall into the early winter. And when it gets really cold, it goes to a cave and it hibernates, right? So he caught one of these things and dissected it to figure out what's inside it, just like they used to do. We don't do that kind of stuff anymore as scientists. And he was drawing all the organs, and he found this little brown lump between his shoulder blades. And he was like, I don't know what this is. This is an organ I haven't seen before. So they called it an hibernoma, which is a mass associated with hibernation. And guess what it did? Well, that during the winter, ultra cold weather, the cold temperature would fire up that massive little brown fat in the hibernating animal. And guess what? That brown fat would go click, 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 whoosh, just like your stovetop. And it needed to draw the energy from somewhere. Guess where it drew it from? It drew it from the fat that woodchucky thing stored from eating and getting real pudgy all fall and into the early winter. And so by the time spring comes around, the animal's still alive, kept warm over the winter by the brown fat. And guess what happened? It got a lot thinner. The fat burned down. Good fat fights bad fat. Brown fat burns down white fat with cold temperature. But now we realize humans have it as well. And not just cold temperatures, but there are certain foods that will also activate your brown fat, regardless of the temperature in which you live.
Okay, we're going to get to those foods because I know you have a list of them, and I'd love for us to go through those. Before we get there, you talked about weight. So we're talking about fat. You made the analogy of, you walk out of the shower, you go, oh, now I need to weigh myself, and now I need to go on I need to not eat these foods and whatnot. But you talk about weight in the book. And I found this incredibly interesting because there's a sweet spot. You actually do say, losing just a couple of pounds actually helps you out in fighting disease. And I want to back up a second and say, we're all talking about this because what you're doing is talking about fighting disease. You're not saying, lose weight for the sake of losing weight. You're saying to put yourself in an optimal position to fight disease. So
that's right.
Go through that sweet spot of weight, because it's not necessarily the number, it's something else.
Right. Well, so I'm trying to unravel the tangled ball of yarn in people's minds when it comes to weight and fat and metabolism, to basically say, many people struggle with their weight and are anxious, desperate, and sometimes crazy about trying to figure out how to actually lose weight almost at any cost. And what the real science shows us is that it's not wise to actually go after these extreme diets that promise lose 20 pounds in 2 weeks, or, because you can't sustain those, and you have to do extreme things that put your body in a state of stress. And then when you can no longer stand it anymore, human nature boomerangs back, and then you tend to overeat the bad things that contribute to your weight as well. And then you have this yo-yo kind of process that winds up, kind of, you take one step forward, you take 2 steps back. And that's then leads to this frustration. And it turns out that the new science shows that, honestly, even losing a little weight can be beneficial when it comes to inner health. We're not talking about the bathing suit. We're not talking about your dress size or the jeans. We're talking about inner health, because when you're healthy on the inside, you're going to look better on the outside. But you have to win that position of healthy on the inside in slow increments. So it's amazing that, like losing just between 1 and 4 pounds, all right, will lower your blood pressure and decrease your risk of heart failure later on by about 6%. Now, 6% may not sound like a lot, but neither does 1 to 4 pounds. All right. And so this is where losing a little can gain you a lot. Once you go into 5 or 6 pounds, you're talking about decreasing risk of breast cancer by about 10%, 15%. You're talking about stepping up as you lose more weight to gaining more benefit. But you don't need to actually go straight away to lose those massive pounds. So every inch that you can actually gain and actually can be beneficial from the inside out. So my take home really for this particular question is stay away from extreme diets that you're not going to be able to stick to. Start working on ways of making progress step by step. I mean, that's how we do anything in life, is going stepwise. And every step you take, every few pounds can actually gain you something, and it doesn't take much. For example, what's really, really amazing is that you can gain metabolic health, lose harmful body fat, shrink your waist size just by eating 1 ripe tomato a day.
What?
That'll do it.
What?
Yeah. And this is the study done this is a study done in Portugal at the University of Porto, where they studied young women, 18 to 25, who were not unhealthy. They were just young people. And they wanted to find out, would tomatoes influence their metabolism and body fat? Now, what's in a tomato? The reason they were studying this is inside a tomato, there is a natural bioactive chemical called lycopene. Lycopene, which likes to dissolve in oil and fat, which is why you saute your tomato sauce with a little bit of olive oil. Okay. Lycopene gets absorbed in the body, and it does a lot of great things. Actually lowers the risk of breast cancer by cutting off the blood vessels feeding cancer, about a 30% reduction in the risk of men with prostate, to reduce the risk of prostate cancer. But as it relates to metabolism, lycopene ignites the brown fat to burn down harmful white fat.
Okay.
In fact, it's been studied. Where does the lycopene go? And so this is a different study at Tufts University, where they're actually studying young people who are eating foods containing lycopene, like tomatoes or watermelons or guava. Okay. It turns out that when you measure the blood and you do biopsies of different fat tissue, lycopene likes to dissolve in fat. So if you eat it, it'll kind of, you chew it, goes in your stomach, in your intestines, it gets absorbed into your bloodstream, makes a beeline for your belly fat. Then it goes into your thigh fat. Then it goes into your butt fat. And once it's embedded in your fat, like a homing missile, it begins burning down that fat, which is pretty cool.
Unbelievable.
Right?
Unbelievable.
So back to the study in Portugal, just feeding women 1 ripe tomato a day. Okay. Actually, they started over the course of a month to shrink their waist size by almost an inch, which means that their letting up their brown fat was burning down their harmful white fat that was packed inside the tube of their body.
Yeah.
Their cholesterol got better. Their blood pressure got a little bit better. They started feeling more energy. Their insulin levels actually started to taper down a little bit as well. Metabolic health with a single tomato. And so again, I'm trying to kind of convey that let's kind of recognize that while numbers are important, and how you look does important. I'm a big champion of feeling good about yourself. And so if you want to lose some pounds, go for it. But my point is that starting with inner health is the most important thing you can do, and focusing on numbers, big numbers, especially when it comes to body weight, body size, is a problem. By the way, I read about in my book about body size. Think about the fittest people in the world. We see them every 4 years during the Olympics.
Yeah.
And you start seeing the tiny gymnast, you see the stocky weightlifter, you see the thin javelin thrower. Listen, regardless of body size, these are people who are super fit, and they all weigh different amounts. And they all have they're in really, really good shape. They're at the peak of their fitness. So the other thing I think that we need to do is to sort of start getting away from judging ourselves and other people simply on the basis of their body size. We need to understand inner health comes from a bunch of different things that come together, and your metabolism is actually at the heart of it as well. But you don't need to actually starve yourself in order to be able to get metabolically healthier.
Okay, let's talk about that metabolism, because when you look at those athletes, you say, their metabolism, much better than mine. Women get older, they say, I'm going through menopause, there goes my metabolism. We look at men, we say, easy for them to drop those 5 pounds. We look at the skinny women, we say, their metabolism must be fast. You say?
The surprising fact is that human metabolism, all of us, everyone listening to this, you and me, our metabolism is hardwired like the operating system of a laptop. And what that means is that our metabolism has been discovered to be exactly the same. We're all born with the same metabolism. We all go through the same 4 phases of metabolism from birth to death. And there's only 4 stages. And guess what? Perhaps the biggest surprise, the biggest mic drop that I have for people who read my book, Eat to Beat Your Diet, is that the latest research has established that during our adulthood in humans, from age 20 to 60, 20, 30, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60, that human metabolism is rock stable. It's designed, hardwired, not to automatically change. So when you actually hit your middle age, it doesn't automatically change. And so that's surprising. And it's not that your metabolism is slow, and so you gain weight. It's actually the other way around. What actually happens in middle age is that gaining extra body weight, and I'll tell you why that happens, actually slows our metabolism. It's completely the opposite of what we think. It's not our metabolism slows down that causes us to gain body fat and gain weight. It's the other way around. We gain extra body fat, and that extra fat suppresses our metabolism. So this was based, by the way, this was discovered in a study that was published just in 2021. So just a few years ago, smoking hot scientific research. This study actually has caused the textbooks on metabolism to be ripped up, and the new textbooks are still being written as we speak. And what we know is that when you're born, we're all born with the same metabolism. From 0 to 1 years old, our metabolism skyrockets, to 50% higher than what it's going to be as an adult. That's phase 1. Phase 2 is from 1 year old to 20 years old. Our metabolism, right through adolescence, right? You think that the teenagers who are eating 2 or 3 dinners and are full of energy and they're growing tall, their metabolism is skyrocketing, right? Nope.
Wow, not true.
1 to 20, metabolism is going down, 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 down to adult levels. All right. This is what science is revealing. And then from 20 to 60, metabolism is a flat line. That's how we're designed to be. And then from 60 to 90, it does decline a little bit, only about 17% by the time we're 90. So what this means, 20 and 60 is a flat line, means that 60 can be the new 20 if you allow your metabolism to do what it wants to do. Now, how do we get at this information? Well, this is the study of 6,000 people from 20 countries, all different backgrounds, different genetics, different diseases, different food types, and they studied them all using the same approach, the same technique, giving them a drink of water, H2O, in which the H, the hydrogen, and the O, the water in H2O, tweaked a little bit so we can measure what your metabolism does to it. And what they did when they measured the metabolism, human metabolism, from 1 week old to 90 years old, every age category, they subtracted the effect of excess body fat from the results. And they found this is exactly what they adjusted the results so that they removed the skew that extra body fat would be, and that's how these 4 phases popped up. Because everyone gains extra body fat in different ways. So what happens during middle age? Why do we? Why does our shape change?
Answer
and
that.
Why do we struggle?
Why?
Well, you know what? Because, and you know, you're going to smile at this, but I think it's going to resonate with anyone listening to this, because life happens. All right. When you're 40, 45, suddenly, you know, we're way more distracted than we used to be. Okay. We got different stresses and different worries. You might be worried about your kids. You might be worried about your relationship. You might be worried about your job. You might be worried about the economy. You might be worried about the climate. You might be worried about a war. We're inundated with different things. Then we actually do hit menopause, or, you know, our testosterone levels drop. And now, because those hormones that we lived with, you know, from puberty onwards change, our brain and our behaviors start to change as well. So we might not make the same decisions in the same way as we would have when we were younger. Now add the stress on. You know, I'm a little too tired to work out the same way that I used to. I've got kids. I got to pick them up from school. You know what? I'm too tired to work out today. Oh, I got to eat something. Well, you know what? When hormones actually start to shift in your brain and you're stressed out, you know, you might just be more likely to choose that less helpful choice, more harmful choice of an ultra processed convenience food that's right in front of you, that's surrounding us, when we have more means and when we're able to get around and we're more race. So what happens actually is that there are physiological things that happen inside us when we do hit menopause, for example. But also what happens is that we're a lot more stressed out. So we tend to gain more body fat, okay, as a consequence of what happens to us in midlife. The midlife crisis, so to speak, is associated with gaining weight. And now what happens is now you gain some weight and the extra fat suppresses your metabolism. All right. And now we mistakenly think it's the metabolism's fault, but it's all these other things.
Yeah.
Why is that good news, Alita? It's because it means that the power to allow our metabolism to rise to its own waterline, what it wants to do, hardware to do, lies in our hands.
Yeah.
We can't just say, there's nothing else I can do.
Yeah.
Of course there is. We can allow our metabolism to rise to the surface with a little bit of deliberate thought.
Okay, so we're going to reset our metabolism. Where do we begin?
Okay, so one of the things that I like to do, to tell everybody, is to allow this operating system to work for you. Let your body do the work for you, right? Don't that's the easiest thing. Okay, so what do we want to do? We want to burn down excess harmful body fat. The kind of body fat that's packed in the tube of your body, kind of the fat that is like a baseball glove, choking your organs, that's highly inflamed, that causes you all kinds of problems, derails your metabolism. How do you do that? Well, I did tell you cold temperatures will burn it down. You know, cold plunges is not for everyone. And I did tell you some foods can actually do it. We'll come back to foods.
Yes.
But guess what? When our metabolism is hardwired to burn down that extra fat every single day, when we are in a period of not eating. So that's called fasting. Now, you've heard of intermittent fasting, and it sounds like a fad, a trend. Okay. It's not a fad or a trend. Intermittent fasting has been with us as long as humans have walked the earth. And we intermittently fast when we're sleeping. We're not eating, we're fasting. All right. In fact, when you get up in the morning and you eat that first meal, it's called breakfast, break,
the fast. Yeah. Okay.
Now, here's the thing that you need to know. When we're eating, our body is wired. So when we put food in our mouth, our body, our endocrine organs, our pancreas secretes insulin to say, oh, let's focus on getting some of that energy that you've just put in your mouth and going down your gut. Let's draw some of that energy in the cell. So our metabolism is focused on storing energy. All right. Just like when you're actually at the gas station filling up the gas in your car, they tell you to turn off the motor, turn off the engine. Don't be driving around. Just leave the car, turn everything off, focus on filling up the tank. And that's basically what our metabolism is focused on when we're eating during a day. When we're not eating at night, when we're fasting, our metabolism shifts gears. Okay. And it goes, oh, no more food. I guess we're not actually storing anymore. Let's shift gears to burning down fuel. Let's burn fat. Just like when you're done filling up the tank at the gas station, put the nozzle away, close the cap, drive off in your car. Now you're burning fuel. Burn some rubber, baby. You can burn that. You can burn that fuel down. That's what we do. Our body, our metabolism burns body fat when we're sleeping.
So is there a sweet spot of how long we need to do that? Okay.
Absolutely. Okay. So we know, and this has been well established for well over a decade, that 8 hours of sleep is something we should all aim for. Not everyone can do it. Even me, it's hard sometimes to get 8 hours of sleep, but 8 hours is a sweet spot. 7 to 8 hours. Okay. Obviously, some people sleep a little less and they're okay, a little bit more. We do know that extremes, like way too little or way too much, is not good for you. When you're sleeping, your immune system rebuilds itself, your stem cells reboot itself, our gut gets healthier, but our metabolism loves that 8 hour sweet spot to be able to burn down harmful body fat. Now, what are you burning away in that 8 hours? You're burning away all the extra fat that you might have stored up. Maybe what you ate for dinner, what you ate for lunch, or maybe what you ate over the last weekend, or during the Super Bowl, or over the holidays, or maybe last summer. Okay, the more you actually accumulate in terms of body fat, the longer it's going to take. But your body every single night is dedicated, because of your metabolism, hardwired to burn down body fat. Now, you can do more than 8 hours though. Okay, because fasting for 8 hours, that's a minimum.
Right.
You want to get a little bit more out of it to let your body do the work for you. Here's what I say. This is what I do. If I eat dinner at 7 o'clock and I put my dishes away at 8 o'clock, I'm done with dinner. I know some people eat a little bit longer, some people eat a little bit shorter. Let's just say sit down to eat dinner at 7, finish dinner at 8, put the dishes away. Now, don't eat a midnight snack, bedtime snack. Don't nosh in the evening. That's really, really common.
Yeah.
A lot of people sit after dinner, they sit down with a bowl of something and they just snack on it all day long. But imagine you put your dishes away and that's it. You're not eating anymore. Okay. The symbolism of putting your dishes away says it all. Now let's say I do that at 8 o'clock.
Okay.
And I'm going to go to bed at 11. So that's 3 hours. And let's say I'm going to get 8 hours of sleep, 11 to 7 o'clock in the morning. So now in addition to the 8 hours of sleep, I add 3 hours where my metabolism is fasting.
Right.
3 plus 8 is 11 hours. I've gained so much more fat burning time. And by the way, when I get up in the morning, I don't do what my mom trained me to do when I was a kid. Hurry up, get up, eat some breakfast, get on the school bus, don't be late for school.
What do you do?
I get up and I take my time. I'll take a shower, I get dressed, I'll go downstairs, I'll actually read a book, catch up on my emails. I wait about an hour after I get up before I eat anything. So that's 1 extra hour in the morning. So 3 hours the night before after dinner.
Yeah.
8 hours during slumber time.
Yeah.
1 extra hour in the morning. Do the math. 3 plus 8 plus 1. That's 12 hours. Guess what, Alita? I've just spent half my day burning down body fat. Now, if anybody wants to get started doing just that, picks off your body's ability to start burning down fat. Don't do anything else, but that is a great start. Doesn't require you to buy any superfoods, subscribe to a monthly plan of supplements. You don't need to hire a trainer.
Right.
That is actually getting a good start. Now, anything you do in addition to that, do exercise, do actually work out, do burn some calories, don't eat too much. Volume is a big deal. If you eat too much, whenever you eat, it's like overfilling the gas tank in your car. What happens when you do that at the filling station? Well, actually, the filling station prevents us from doing that. Like you fill it up, the gas tank is full, click, no more gas comes out, right? But there are, in Europe, places where you can just keep on filling it up. And I remember as a kid, I think when I was 16, I learned how to drive. They didn't have the clicker again. You could easily overflow the gas tank,
remember that.
right?
Yes.
What a disaster. The gas overflows the car, goes down the side of the car, around the wheels. You're standing in a pool of toxic, flammable, harmful gasoline. It's a potential catastrophe.
But that you can
That's what
see.
happens when
That's what you can see that. But when you overeat, you can't see that spillage. So how do we know?
Right. Well, you know that when you actually need to an extra loop, an extra hole in your belt.
Open your pants. Yeah.
Okay.
You
got to open your pants, or you might see you might see something in the mirror that you don't like. That's when you start building up. By the way, there is something called a DEXA scan. DEXA. That's actually a type of scan that you can go in a fitness center or with an integrative medicine doctor that can measure your bones, your muscles, your body fat, and even tell how much visceral fat you have, gut fat you have inside your body. But, I always get asked this, is there a way that I can know how much visceral fat I have? Like, am I doing better? Am I burning it down? Yes, there's a cheap way. And that is with just your belt or with a measuring tape that like a tailor would use, just around your waist. Because as you are actually allowing your body to burn down that extra body fat, your waist circumference will actually shrink. As that harmful body fat, extra body fat shrinks inside your body tube, that tube will shrink. The tube will expand when you actually start packing it with packing peanuts, but it shrinks when you shrink it. So that's like the poor man's way of actually knowing whether you're burning away visceral fat.
And how do you know when you're in the right spot? How do you know when you've burned enough and you're not going to the other side where you don't have enough fat to be burning? I mean, you don't want to go crazy with this.
It's a great question. It's different for men and women. It's different for your own body size. But when you actually start feeling like weak is like when you've actually when you've gone below the threshold. Bodybuilders that want to define every sinew on the stage before a judge. I mean, they might look very impressive, and this could be both men and women. I've actually seen. I know people who are in bodybuilding in both camps. They look amazing when you actually appreciate what they're trying to achieve, but they have body fat like 3% body fat, 5% body fat. That is dangerous territory. Okay, they are metabolically unhealthy. Remember, I told you, when you actually have that fat, not only is it padding and a fuel tank, but it's also releases hormones. When you have that little fuel tanks, you're not storing very much fuel. And when you're that sparing with your hormones, you're not getting enough hormones. Your metabolism is really working hard. So when you start feeling weak because you're not getting enough energy, you've probably actually gone to the other extreme.
So if those people were to get disease, would they not be able to fight disease because they don't have enough fat? Would they be at a disadvantage if we got the same disease?
Absolutely. It turns out that being underweight being overweight is not healthy. Okay. But being underweight is actually worse for your health than being overweight. Now, one of the reasons why is that I didn't mention a fifth hidden role of your body fat, is that your body fat also is a beehive for about 20%, 15 to 20% of your immune system. Our immune cells also park themselves in our body fat, healthy body fat. All right. So when you actually whittle down, so you're operating on 5% body fat, like a bodybuilder would, they're also cutting down on their immune system.
Oh.
All right. Okay. And so now they're actually much more vulnerable to all kinds of diseases. So this is why we don't want to fear body fat. We want to tame it. Fat's not a villain. Fat's actually a friend. We just need to have enough of it. Not too little, not too much. It's kind of like Goldilocks, not too hard, not too soft, not too hot, not too cold.
Yeah.
Just right.
Just right.
And that's why, why I don't think that I don't necessarily agree with this sort of, the social pressure, to say plus size is beautiful and normal. That's, I think, a social countering of an overemphasis on skinny from decades past. I understand that. But I think what we should be doing is really saying that every individual has their own sweet spot. It has to do with their body size. It has to do with their sex and their height and all that other kind of stuff. And, this is where the research is. And it's very exciting that we are now beginning to take a look at how do we individualize and personalize what is optimal for each individual. So rather than, kind of go out and, like some of these programs do, one size fits all. What we're really moving into is this phase where we try to respect everybody's individual health. Just like everyone has their own ideas and their own perceptions and their own opinions. It is true now. The science shows us that every individual, based on their body size and based on their habits and what they have access to, has their own ideal of how much body fat they should have. And so that's where the research is now as well.
And to have it to fight disease. I want to make sure we're clear with that. That's what the sweet spot is. It's not about how you look. It's not, at least that's what you're saying. It's not about how you look. It's not, that may be something that we look in the mirror and think, oh, I want to look like this. But as far as to fight disease, to be healthy, to fight disease, there is a sweet spot in there. Let's talk about food. What do you eat? What's your approach?
Okay. I always get asked this, like, Doctor, what do you eat? What's your diet? I'm not on a diet, but I do have an approach to eating because of what I know. For people who want a list of foods, in both my first book, Eat to Beat Disease, and my most recent book, Eat to Beat Your Diet, I have a list of 200 foods in the first one and 150 foods in the second one that are all supported by human evidence. And I eat all of these foods that actually help support my health defenses and help boost my metabolism, help me burn excess body fat. But, if you wanted to photograph those lists and use them as a shopping list, that's not a helpful answer, though. I'll tell you an operational answer that people can get behind. I eat, and I have a way of eating. And my way I eat, and what I call it in Eat to Beat Your Diet, is I said I eat using a mediterrasian approach to eating.
Mediterrasian, okay.
Mediterrasian. Well, you've heard of Mediterranean,
yes.
You've heard of Asian. Well, I mash it up in my own life, and I call it Mediterrasian because it actually is how I truly eat. I mean, I grew up in an Asian family, and so I'm very accustomed to Asian food, and I love it. And I did a gap year before I went to medical school, and I lived in the Mediterranean. I lived in Italy and I lived in Greece, and I was there to study food, health, and culture. And so I very naturally gravitate, whether I'm in a grocery shopping, whether I'm menu planning for myself, whether I'm at a restaurant looking at what's on offer, when I open my refrigerator, I'll naturally think, I'll gravitate towards, is there something kind of Mediterranean-ish or something Asian-ish that I can actually go for? Okay. And after all, who can't go find something they like if they go into a Mediterranean restaurant or an Asian restaurant, right? So that's how I actually eat. And the reason that works out for me from a health perspective is because I know that within the traditional recipes of Mediterranean cooking, Mediterranean countries, and the traditional Asian recipes are all these ingredients that you can find in the produce section or in the middle aisles or in the seafood section that actually light up my health defenses, and also help me have a better metabolism. What are some of those foods? Broccoli rabe, bok choy, shiitake mushrooms, white button mushrooms, red onion, garlic, olives, carrots, escarole, endive, apples, pears, citrus. Like, these are all the things that you would find, if you typed in the Mediterranean and recipe and hit a video, you would actually find people cooking these types of things. So I love the idea that I can look for recipes and eat foods that are absolutely delicious, that adhere to some of these time-honored, revered recipes. Middle aisle, okay, supposed to stay away from the middle aisle. Not according to the science. It's true, you want to stay away from ultra-processed foods and all the things with artificial sweeteners and preservatives. But think about these healthy foods: dried beans, lentils, chickpeas, dried mushrooms, chili flakes, olive oil, tinned seafoods of various sorts, soba noodles. Okay, these all contain substances. They've been shown by human evidence and research light up your metabolism. What's not to love about those? You don't know how to cook them? Type beans, white beans, and type up Mediterranean recipe and hit video and watch somebody show you how to actually make something absolutely delicious out of it. And so these are sort of like the delight. Like, I view every opportunity to eat as an opportunity to delight my senses while lighting up my health. And that's basically how I go about doing it.
Okay. And I know you can't go through all the foods, but you do go through a lot of them in the book. And I love that. We know what strawberries do and blueberries and all these different foods. Give us what did you eat for breakfast this morning? And what does that do to your body?
Okay. Let's see. I got to remember what I had for breakfast this morning. I had something very simple. I had an 8-ounce glass of pomegranate juice. The type that I have is pressed through the skin, and lots of the polyphenol is in the skin. So when you press it through the skin, you get like ultra polyphenols. I just had 8 ounces of that. And the reason I did that is because I know the pomegranate juice contains a polyphenol, bioactive, that makes my gut healthier. And I want to grow a bacteria called Akkermansia mucinophila that makes my metabolism better. People that have less body fat actually have more of Akkermansia. It helps my immune system. It's defensive against cancer. So that's 1 8-ounce glass of pomegranate juice. Actually lowers the risk of prostate cancer as well. Then I actually had avocado on sourdough. Okay. Avocado, even though it's soft, amazingly, it's a great source of dietary fiber. And the dietary fiber is also good for my gut health, good for my immune system. But there's something in avocado called avocatin B. B as in boy. And avocatin B lights up your brown fat to burn down white fat. Okay. And avocado is a great source of natural healthy fats, and it's got some nice protein in it as well. I think I had some herbs. I put some herbs on it as well. That's basically what I had for breakfast. I tend to eat a very, very light breakfast. So this is kind of like the general approach that I actually have. Sometimes I'll have an egg for breakfast. Okay. When I try to have an egg for breakfast, I'm okay with eggs. Most of the data shows that eggs are actually quite healthy for you. I'll have 1 egg instead of 2. If I'm scrambling or frying my egg, however I prepare it, I use olive oil. Not butter, because olive oil is a great way to get some polyphenols in the morning. I'll usually have 1 egg. And if I can get my hands on them, I get organic free-range eggs. And the reason is that when I crack that egg open, that yolk is not yellow like the sun, like I grew up eating these yellow, bright yellow eggs.
Yeah.
The yolk of an organic free-range egg of chicken actually is like a blood moon. It's dark orange, almost red. Mm-hmm. And the reason it's dark orange, almost red, it's packed with carotenoids that the normal hen actually ate as part of their normal diet. And the hen, deposits it in their egg. Good for my eyesight, good for my metabolism. It's got beta-cryptoxanthin and all these other great things in it. So again, look, I could spit it out at you. I had an egg fried in a little bit of olive oil. I had an avocado on sourdough. I had a small glass of pomegranate juice. Yeah, that's what I ate. Yeah. However, I'm just telling you that behind all that, you don't need to know all this, but behind all that, you should know that there's a lot of science that teaches us why being mindful of the choices that we make can actually do a lot for our health and our metabolism.
Yeah. Wow. Such great information. So much in the book. I've been reading it. I've listened to the audio version of it. I keep going back and referring. My family is probably, I don't know if they're tired or they're really curious about it, but at every meal I'm like, what this does and what that does. And it's really fascinating. And what's fascinating to me also when I read it is that so much is new information, like you just mentioned about the metabolism study. There's so much new information to come of this. And I almost want to give it to my doctor as a little gift. But I find that it's just incredible, and it's endless. And it's so nice to know that there is so much that we can do that is actually in our hands, and you're empowering us to do that. And also, I have to say, because my background is the communication side of it, you do an excellent job of communicating, at breaking it down to what we have for breakfast, to what this actually does, and serving it up to us in a way that we can digest it, to kind of play on words there. So what's next for you? How are you going to continue to spread this message?
Well, every day I sort of feel like I'm drinking from a fire hydrant with tons of new information that continues to come out. And it's really quite amazing. My mission in life is to really get information out that people can use that has some immediacy that they can actually improve their lives. That's kind of how I'm hardwired. And so I try to create a newsletter. I put it out every week. And I put information in it that I do the heavy lifting to try to get information out. So, anybody can sign up for my newsletter. I've been doing master classes where I'll come online every now and then. And I'll just try teaching and sharing information and giving people useful tips. I decided finally to create some online courses because some people would come into me and say, look, I really want to do a deep dive. I'd love to actually learn more. And because I used to teach at medical schools and universities, I created a curriculum. So I created online courses. People can come to my website, drwilliamlee.com, to learn about those classes. But, honestly, I just every day feel like I'm learning something new that could be useful. I try to process that. If I can cook it, to serve it up to myself, while I serve it up to other people, I love to explore food. I now that we're moving beyond all the concerns of the pandemic that were keeping us at home, I'm back to starting to travel and to explore how other people, I love learning. So I love learning how other people actually are using food. And by the way, just for the curious, I'm really big into a plant-forward diet, but most people, many people, anyone who lives near a coast will eat seafood. I decided in this book, Eat to Beat Your Diet, to dedicate an entire chapter to seafood. Now, my agent and my publisher at the very beginning of this project said, be careful. People don't like fish. It's too fishy. It's not a book that's going to interest a lot of people. I said, you know what? Actually, that's the reason to write an entire chapter. So I put a chapter in there about seafood, and I put all my foodie sensibilities into it to basically say it's not just about salmon and tuna and mackerel and anchovies and sardines, although those are good. But surprisingly, the new data shows that even cod can actually help you lose weight, and the omega-3s in cod is enough to actually help you out. Oh my gosh, if you need only that little omega-3,
right?
Guess what? Now the floodgates open to mussels and clams and shrimp and calamari and octopus and all kinds of other critters that I've had sea creatures. I've actually had the benefit of doing research and eating. And if you go to Italy, you go to Spain, you go to Asia, you go to Hong Kong, you go to Japan, the amount of really cool, delicious seafood you can eat is amazing. And so I wanted to put some of my passion for that stuff in there. And I'm sure I'm the only doctor who wrote a book with the word diet in his cover that actually wrote about mantis shrimp, slipper lobster, and mitten crab.
Yeah, well, you have some delicious recipes in there. You're talking to a seafood lover herself, so you don't have to sell me on it. You're in Boston. I'm from Boston. You have great seafood there. I love that too. Well, I'm here to help spread the word. I mean, I can't stop talking about what I've read in the book. I will have everything that you just mentioned in the show notes. I want to thank you again. The book is Eat to Beat Your Diet. I'll have that in the notes as well. And good luck to spreading this message. I'm in.
Thanks so much. It's a real pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you.